Anyone know what that is? That's music to my ears. That's another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling shirts or sandals, start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. With Shopify, you'll customize your online store to your brand, discover new customers, and build relationships that will keep them coming back. Shopify covers all the sales channels to successfully grow your business, from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And thanks to 24/7 support and free on-demand business courses, Shopify is here to help you succeed every step of the way. It's how every minute new sellers around the world make their first sale with Shopify. And you can do it too. I love how Shopify makes it simple for anyone to sell their products anywhere. Whether they're ebooks or earrings, Shopify simplifies starting and running your own successful business. When you're ready to take your idea to the world, do it with Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Now it's your turn to try Shopify for free and start selling anywhere. So sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/C-Suite, all lowercase on C-Suite. Go to shopify.com/C-Suite, all lowercase on C-Suite to start selling online today. Shopify.com/C-Suite.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where I've got the absolute pleasure and privilege of being joined by old friend and my old boss, Greg Ellison. So, Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kim. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. And we had a fabulous catch-up, didn't we, just the other week, when you were telling me about some of the amazing things that you've done, including setting up a bank during lockdown, whilst also having a family, or rather an addition to the family. So, I mean, when we talk about achievements, that's quite a journey. Can you tell us a bit more about how you went about it and what some of your learnings were, please?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the journey to start setting up a bank began in January 2017. I began my career with Capital International Group in July 2016. And at the time, it was a privately owned, family-owned, successful investment management firm. And the chairman brought me in because he wanted to give the management team a new lease of life and some new ideas. And I'd known the firm very well. I'd been a client of Capital's for a few years. And I knew the chairman very well. We both sat on a not-for-profit board, Junior Achievement, for 8 or 9 years together. So it was an easy move for me to make. And I spent the first 6 months of my time in the second half of 2016, just assessing where the business was, the things it did great, the things that we needed to work on, and pulled together a strategic plan, which I took to the board in early 2017. And one of the things that we recognised was an opportunity was the possibility of setting up a new digital corporate bank in the Isle of Man. In the 10 years that had gone before, the big banks had largely retreated from providing core operational banking accounts to corporate clients. And I'd been part of that. I was the managing director of Barclays Wealth on the Isle of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey. That's where we worked together. You know the story. And it left some great companies unable to access core transactional banking. So we knew it'd be a big undertaking. So I did a lot of research at the start of the journey. I did 65 meetings in 8 different countries with existing clients or target clients, just to test some of my ideas about whether there was really an opportunity. And if so, what would be the things that we'd have to get right to go along that journey. I could talk for 2 days about the journey, but in brief, it took us a couple of years to pull together the business plan. Obviously, there was a lot of engagement with the regulator. We had to produce all sorts of financial models around how we would fund the bank, how we would manage the assets, the operational processes, the risk, compliance, the governance, the people, loads and loads of details, hundreds of pages. And by August 2019, we achieved our first breakthrough, which was to get a provisional banking license. This meant that the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority had said, yep, that is a business plan. We support it. You can now go ahead and start building the bank. So it was a kind of 2 years to get the provisional license. But at that stage, you've just got a theoretical bank, it's a pen on paper. And then it took us a couple more years to build all the operational infrastructure, huge technology development, hire the people, hire the external independent directors, and make it a reality. Now, that second half of the journey kind of coincided with the start of lockdown and everything that went with it. So it added a few layers of complexity, but I'd assembled a team that were so invested in the journey that we were on. And the ask of them was incredible and unfair at times, but no matter the challenge, and there were hundreds of challenges, some of which seemed at times didn't have an answer, but they always found a way. And on the 27th of May, 2021, we got our banking license and opened our doors the next day. So that's the short version of the journey.
What an amazing achievement for you and for the team. And what I love about the story when we chatted about it the other week is it really was a joint purpose, wasn't it? Everyone was invested in the vision, in bringing it to life. And therefore, when obstacles came up, the belief was greater than the obstacle. So the belief that it could happen, the belief that it could be done. And that, that's the culture that you built with that team and the vision that you created, the story that you did. How did you go about kind of creating that team, that kind of sense of purpose, that sense of vision?
I think the story in itself was so compelling that I didn't have to sell it too hard to them. There was a great deal of authenticity about it. I hired people who were very experienced in themselves, but recognized that this was a career-defining opportunity for them. And there were times that, particularly in tough times, that I'd say to people, just remember, when you hang up your boots in however many years, for some people it might be 5 years, for others it might be 25 years. This is something you'll tell your grandkids about. And you can work in financial services for 40 years and then look back and think, what did I actually do? You came into work, you had lots of meetings, but this is a landmark achievement and a tangible legacy for your career's work. And the first time I remember thinking I need to do something a lot more meaningful than I had done to date was when I was in Dubai in probably 2013-ish, around then. And I used to travel out there a lot with my former company on business development, and we set up a business there. And I'd done lots of things, setting up businesses and running big businesses like Barclays. But I was having a beer with one of my school friends who's a structured engineer, and he builds skyscrapers, and that particular day, I'd been in meetings with lawyers and accountants and family officers and private equity people. And we were talking over a beer. It was a Thursday evening, the end of the working week in Dubai, as it was at the time. And that very day, he'd been at the top of the Burj Khalifa doing a risk assessment for Red Bull to do some base diving off the top. And he showed me a selfie with him standing on the top of the spire at the top of the Khalifa. And I realized at that very point that for that moment in time, he was the highest person in the world on a man-made structure. Wow. And he built and contributed to buildings, hotels, skyscrapers in New York, in Dublin, in London, in India, in Dubai. And it just occurred to me, he has so much tangible evidence of his career and the contribution he's made. And I flew home that after that trip, and I thought, what am I actually doing? I need to do something that's going to make a difference. And I guess a few years later, the opportunity came for the bank, and I realised that was my chance.
Oh, I love that. And I love that whole, because we are all leaving a legacy, aren't we? So it's about owning that legacy and saying, is it one I'm going to be proud of? Is it going to be something that, when I tell my kids about, that it's going to make them proud as well. They're going to go, oh, that's why you worked as many hours as you worked. But you've always had that kind of like sense of belief, haven't you? And then doing your best and trying. Because you've had quite a varied career. You had obviously done banking, which is where we met, but you were also a sportsman, weren't you?
Back in the early days. So I went to school at Bradford Grammar School in the late 80s, early 90s. And at the time, rugby was everything to me. It was a brilliant school academically, but it was the best school in England at rugby. And we won the Daily Mail Schools Cup in 1990, 92, 93. And I was fortunate to be surrounded by a great group of guys and a brilliant coach. And I got selected for the England under-18s, and we toured New Zealand, and I got a rugby scholarship to Swansea University to study business studies. And as rugby turned professional, I played with Swansea in a couple of teams, and I learned and took so much from my rugby career around goal setting and resilience and getting up when it hurts and teamwork and communication and all those things. And they have absolutely built the person that I've become. And I'm just very grateful for the opportunities that I took from sport and what it gave me. And actually, I had a tough decision to make when I graduated, because rugby had only just turned professional. It was in its infancy. And so there was a little bit of money flying around, but not enough really for me to consider a professional career. And I was probably a better schoolboy than I was in the adult grade rugby. I was decent, but I don't think I would have been playing international level in the senior game. So I took the decision to go into work, and that became financial advice, financial services, banking. But I always had in the back of my mind that I never wanted to be that guy at 35 propping up a bar somewhere saying I could have done this at rugby. If I was going to go the business route, I had to throw myself in fully fledged. And so I dropped like 6 divisions and played a bit of sociable rugby for Seven Oaks Rugby Club for a few years, which was great fun. But my priority was absolutely my business career, and it's a decision I've never regretted. It was the right call to make, and I'm pleased with how it's turned out.
I love that. I love that actually it was a very conscious decision, and it was that piece of saying, no, this is choice. This is a choice that I'm making, and I'm making it knowing that I'm not going to allow myself to regret it later, because I'm making it consciously, and I'm going to take the best bits into my future career. All the things that we can learn from sports about team spirit, about camaraderie, about communication, about common purpose and common goal. And you've brought those to life so beautifully in doing what you've done with the bank, in showing what it's like. When you're in a team, you are in a team. You're all heading to that goal. You're all going to do whatever you can do to help the team to be successful. And I think we can learn so much from sports in business, can't we? That around how we do that, because they're often the skills that we unfortunately don't invest enough in businesses.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Kim, because in the last year or so, we've hired a professional coach here at Capital who's an ex-Royal Marine, and he's been doing resilience and mindset training with our staff. Times are tough, whether it was the coronavirus and lockdown and the physical and mental challenges that provided for people, or now, the uncertainty out in the global markets and the war in Ukraine and the impact on rising costs and the cost of living crisis. It's tough times for people, and you can't do anything about interest rates or what's going on in Ukraine or many things. All you can deal with is yourself and how you tackle these challenges. And I think more than ever, we're investing in support for our people to develop their mental resilience, their physical resilience. And, we've got people waking up, having cold showers every morning and doing breathing exercises and going for a dip in the sea in the Isle of Man, which is not...
No, I remember it well.
We're not talking the Costa del Sol or the French Riviera here. We're talking the Irish Sea. But what's interesting is these are skills that people can develop. And when you develop your physical resilience, your mental resilience often follows in line with that. And it's something that I think has paid dividends for us and is something we'll keep investing in because, you've got to help people. And there's many ways you can do it. But if you can help people help themselves, that's a powerful way to do it. I
love that. And, it's one of those things, isn't it? When we win here, we win everywhere else. If we can get our mind in the right place. I remember watching a video, I think it was of an American football team at school, and this guy was like, I can't do any more, and he had to bear crawl with his one of his teammates on his back, and he was like, no, you've just got to do 100 yards, and this guy's going, I'm broken, I'm down, I can't do it, and this coach going, you can do it, you can get. But he actually does the entire pitch with this guy on his back, because he had got his coach had got him into the mental space of saying you can do it. When he stood up and turned around, they were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's how far we've come. And I think you're right, when we can help people to develop that for themselves, to develop that mental resilience and that physical resilience that allows us to deal with the plot twists life throws at us, because it throws so many, and not all of them are ones, to your point, that we can do anything with. There might not be something that we can control, but we can learn to control how we respond and how we react, can't we?
One of the things you talked about there, Kim, was belief. And you'll know in the Isle of Man, there's an event every summer called the Parish Walk. It's an 84-mile walk around the circumference of the island, and it's incredibly challenging. And my deputy chief executive, Werner Alberts, really started roping people in to do this event a few years ago. And now, and Werner had finished it 6 or 8 times. And now we have about 20 people take part every year. And their goal might be to go to Peel, which is 32 miles, or to finish the whole event, or somewhere in between. But every year now, we're getting half a dozen people that are finishing it. And this year we had, for the second year running, the winner, Paul Atherton, our finance director. Leanne Venables came second in the women's race and about 6th overall. And every year we're getting people finishing it for the first time. And I think that's because they believe they can do it, because they've got that positive example from the likes of Werner and Paul and Leanne. They're going out there and smashing it, and they're seeing that if you do the training and you have the right mindset and you prepare properly, then you can go out and achieve it. And there's so much in there about belief and role models, and eventually you just got to get up and do it. And lots of our folk are. So I think belief is a huge thing.
Oh, I love it. And actually, it's one of the things, we were chatting briefly before we came on here, that one of the things I've learned more about leadership since being a mum than I ever learned beforehand. But one of the biggest things I've learned about is belief. If I said to you in the morning, you're going to wake up, you're going to have to learn how to walk or talk or run or jump or skip, you'd be overwhelmed. We'd all be overwhelmed. And yet at our most vulnerable, we learned to do it. Our kids learned to do it. And I was watching them, and it's like, well, how have they done that? I think it comes down to 3 things. They want to be like you. You can walk, they want to walk. They don't know how to say no and really mean it, because even toddler tantrums do run out of steam. But the third, and perhaps the most important, is I've yet to see a child learning to walk that doesn't have at least one adult nearby going, come on, you've got this, you're so close. We quite literally give them our belief.
Yeah.
And I think about kind of some of the great leaders that I've had the opportunity to work alongside, like yourself. They share that belief. They create that belief. They give the belief to their teams. And so you can borrow it until you find your own. You kind of buy into a bit of theirs. And you've done that so beautifully with what you've done with a number of your teams. It's that create that belief for people, isn't it?
And conversely, I think at some level in life, you learn to give up. So I've got 4 kids ranging from 17 to 11 months. And Eliza, my 11-month-old, is walking around furniture. She's days away from taking her first steps. But the world would crawl if you didn't have that ability to keep getting up again. And she falls over 100 times a day, but she gets up again every time. And at some level, we learn, I don't know what age it is, but it must be probably sometime before your 10th birthday, we learn to start giving up. And if you just tried again and tried again and tried again, sometimes you're so close to achieving. So I think belief's important, but just having that determination to try again, like your American football example, you just do it. So we learn from good leaders and follow them, and we can believe, but also you've got to learn not to give up, because hard things and good things aren't easy, and you've got to keep going and find a way.
I love that. And find a way was one of the things we chatted about before, wasn't it? Is that, when you come up against an obstacle, it's like, we'll just find a way. There's got to be a way. And it is that combination of belief in the goal and the determination to get there. The piece that says, it doesn't matter how many times I get knocked down, I'm gonna get up. I might get up a bit slower, but I'm getting up. I'm not staying there, because that's going to be how the only time you're ever going to really fail is when you give up. Because then you can't possibly achieve it. Whereas if you keep getting up, if you keep trying, if you keep rising, then you still have hope that you can achieve it, don't you?
Yeah, and you've got to apply intelligence to that as well. If you've got to read the cues. If you're doing the wrong thing and that's why it's not working, you've got to recognize that. You can't, if a fly flies into a window 100 times, it can fly in 1,000 times. It's not going to get through the window, right? It just isn't going to happen. So you can't just keep going. You've got to recognize whether actually you're going in the right direction, or whether you need to tap the tiller 5 degrees and slightly change course. But I do believe that that resilience and determination is hugely important if you're tackling difficult challenges and ambitious projects. And I wonder if we recognize that enough sometimes. There's quite a cultural piece in society where when things are tough, everyone needs supporting, and we've got to jump in and ease off everyone. Sometimes it's hard, and you just have to push on through, and that's just a fact of life. Yeah.
And some of our toughest challenges that we face in life, when you do just keep up and keep going, and you're right, you do have to add in some intelligence to that says, reflect and refocus. Sometimes you still head towards the goal, but how you get there might be different because the way you're going isn't working. So you might need to your point, tap the tiller and just kind of repurpose where you're going. But actually, when you look back, you suddenly realize how far you've come. Because I think one of the things that I learned when times were tough was, what's the one thing that I know how to do right now? Do that. I just know how to do it, so I'll do that. And if I keep just doing the thing I know how to do, or I know I can do, then before you know it, you've got through whatever the obstacle was. Yeah. Maybe not in the way that you thought you were going to get through it, but you've got through it. And then you can look back and see how far you've come. And I think when we allow our teams to do that, when we allow them that opportunity to not fear failure, because I think that's often one of the things that causes people, isn't it, to give up, is we've got such a massive fear of failing.
Yeah, where did that come from?
I don't know. I was chatting to somebody about this yesterday, and I said it's fascinating that the only thing greater than fear is hope, and yet both of them are imagined. Whatever we hope for is something we imagined, we created it. Whatever we're fearful of is something we imagined, we created it. Neither one's happened yet. So why do we choose to put our focus on the thing we don't like? Makes sense.
it's funny because it's what people do, right? But when you have a fear of failure, and so that kind of dominates your mind, all you're focusing on is failure. And what you focus on is kind of what you do. And then it tends to manifest itself. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I've seen it before with examples where people are scared of losing their job and they work to try and protect the job, and they're doing the wrong things, and then they're doing the job badly and they end up losing the job. They've manifested that outcome instead of actually reorientating themselves to the things they need to do better and do differently, and then be successful at the job. And it's funny, when you're so scared of failing, you actually create the thing that you're most scared of instead of getting energized about the thing that you're trying to achieve. It's one of those human nature things that I've not quite figured out, but it happens all the time. But I guess the thing is being able to identify it in yourself and others, Kim. I guess that's the not the secret, but the key to unlocking it, right?
It's so true. It's when you catch yourself, it's one of the things I'm kind of helping people with at the minute is, how do you swap judgment for curiosity? So when you find yourself saying, well, I think that's wrong, I think this is wrong, I think that's right, instead being curious, like, I've never thought of it like that way before. Tell me how you got there. I wonder why I'm so convinced I'm right and they're wrong. I wonder, but just open your mind, because actually when we make it such a statement, we switch off our subconscious brain from helping us find a way through. We create a piece that says, because our subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between help and harm. So if we tell it we're bad at something, it thinks that that's important to us. So it goes and gets us every example of when we've been bad at it and goes, here you go, you're right.
Yeah.
You are spot on, you're hopeless at this. Whereas if instead we ask ourselves, have I ever been good at it? It will go and get us all the examples of when we're good at it. So you're right, the secret is to spot it in ourselves and in others, catching the language often that we use, or that other people use, where you're like, okay, it's interesting that you've chosen that word. What are you telling yourself about this right now? What have you made it mean? Because that's what we respond to, isn't it? Is we respond to what we're making it mean, not what's actually happening. Yeah. And when we can pull that back, then we can unlock our potential.
Do you know what? You said something earlier that I couldn't agree more with, that sometimes people start with a notion and then they look for evidence to assure themselves of that notion, to confirm it. And the point about having an open mind that you said, I think that's one of the most important things when you're running a team or a business or an organization of some description, because you start with a hypothesis, but there'll be views that are in support of it, views against it, and you can actually, with an open mind, find yourself going in an entirely different direction. But it's an easy trap to fall into, that you start with a hypothesis and you only listen to any evidence or people that reinforce that position that you want to take. And you might as well not have talked to anyone at all, because if you're just going to start with that position and stay with that position, you might as well get on with it and hope for the best. So I think the point you made there about having an open mind is so important. And I think it goes further. I always found immense value in having great people around me. They might be colleagues, but often they were clients. In the business I've worked over many years, I've dealt with a lot of wealthy, successful entrepreneurs, and I've learned so much from them, because you're talking to people that have achieved but have probably failed more than others as well. And there's always so many incredible lessons that you've had from their journeys. I find great inspiration from that. And it's always helped me test some of my ideas with clients, past, present, and other people who I really look up to. I think if you're prepared to listen, you get incredible value from people.
I love that. It's such great advice. I mean, I believe I live the most blessed life because I get to do this for a living. I get to interview people and who can share their journey, who can share their lessons, what they've learned, what mistakes they made. The fact that actually, we only look these days at the outcome. We have these overnight successes, but actually they weren't overnight. People have worked for years behind the scenes to get everything in place for that to happen. And actually, if we surround ourselves by people that have done the thing we want to do, and we listen to them, we open our mind, we stop being wedded to being right. And instead get wedded to the right thing being done, then it's amazing what we can achieve, isn't it? And I think that's the beauty of kind of what you've done, is you've been open to learning as well as open to teaching. So keep creating that environment where you're going to keep learning, but you're also going to add back the value by teaching others and creating that space where that becomes part of the DNA.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And one of the things with the entrepreneurs that I talked about, they had such a clear idea of what had made them different, what had made them successful, where they wanted to go in the future, where they played and where they chose not to play. But every single one of them also felt a little bit lucky. And I do as well, because you talked about the people that I brought on board in the early days of setting up the bank. There was a series of situations where exactly the right people became available at the right time, and I can't control that. Yeah. From Werner, my chief operating officer, to the finance director, to the ops director, to the chief technology officer, to the risk and compliance director, all of them were dream hires, and all of them just happened to come available right at the time. And back in my 20s, late 20s, I was really into Tony Robbins and neurolinguistic programming. And I had this mindset of, you set a goal, you break it down into chunks, you clarify the actions that you want to take, and you get on and do it, and you'll achieve your goal. And I still think there's a lot of merit in that. But I guess I was going to say a fair bit older now, and hopefully a little bit wiser. I'm kind of 75% there now. I think, you can do that, and that will get you 75% of the way. But sometimes you just need the world to work in your favor for the other 25%. And sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it works against you. But there's that was my luck in this bit. The planning and the detail and all that was done. But the luck was the people turning up at the time they did and being absolutely right and available to get on board. That was my luck in the journey.
I love that. And I think you're right. We all have an element of needing the universe to work with us. But I think if we've got the goal, if we've got the direction, if we know where we're going, it's much easier for it to know what's needed. And therefore, we're ready, should that luck come along, to actually take advantage of it, aren't we? To grab hold of that luck and go, that's exactly what I needed.
I'm not a big believer in the law of attraction. I think people are making a lot of money out of selling this stuff. But having said that, it kind of worked for me in that instance. I did my stuff, and then these guys just popped up. So I don't know, maybe there is something.
I think there is a part of, from a neuroscientific point of view, where our subconscious brain filters out loads of things. It filters out things that it thinks aren't interesting to us. So you may have, when you go and buy a new car, and you know which car you're going to buy, and all of a sudden the only thing you see on the roads is the car you want. And it's not because all of a sudden there's loads more of those cars. It's because your subconscious brain now knows it's important to you, so it's looking for them. Yeah. So it goes, oh look, here's one. Yeah. I guess the same is true when we've got a goal and we know what it is. Our subconscious brain is open to be looking for the chance that the right thing might be in your grasp, that can go, oh, talk to this person, go there. And that's when you end up almost with that kind of luck piece. It's just because you're no longer filtering it out, as opposed to necessarily you're attracting something in. I think it's hard, isn't it? Because we see luck as something that's unobtainable. But I think often the difference between people that are being really successful and the ones that aren't is some people wait for the luck first and then do the planning. Whereas for the people that are really successful, they do the planning first and are grateful when the luck comes along to help them do that extra bit. Would that be a fair reflection?
I think it's a good perception on it. And I think you've articulated it a lot better than I did. So every day's a school day.
I love that. My nan used to say that every day is a school day. And my granddad used to say, live each day as if it's your last and one day you'll be right. And I think somewhere between that, there's a great way of living your life, isn't there?
Exactly.
Oh, you've shared so much value already. Could I just ask one last favour? If you could go back and give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
Buy Bitcoin. No, Bitcoin probably didn't exist when I was that young. But what would it be? I think it would just be try as soon as possible to get clear on what you want, and then just go after it, and don't hold back with any regret. I met a guy at a pub in Devon when I was about 19 or 20, and I was down there for a few days on a break, and I'd never met this guy before. We got chatting, and he just buried his son that week, who was about my age. And I was so moved by the conversation. And he told me on his son's tombstone, he used the phrase, he wrote the phrase, "Don't let your fears stand in the way of your dreams." And it just resonated with me hugely. And I was really moved, but that was 30 years ago, and that phrase and that moment has stuck with me ever since, and it's become a kind of maxim that I've tried to believe in. I've never used it with my people or my teams or anything. It's just been a kind of personal motto: don't let your fears stand in the way of your dreams. And I think if I had the opportunity to speak to my 18-year-old self, that would be the message I'd give them. And I was fortunate, I guess, to get that message directly from someone else who it had huge significance for. So, yeah, I'd go with that.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. You shared that with me last time, and I literally have written here on my desk, I have that phrase. And it has to be the title of your book.
Okay. Yes. I'll have to come back on when I've finished my book.
Absolutely. Oh, we would love to have you on, and I can't wait to read the book. So that is a definite deal. Greg, it's been an absolute joy as always. I look forward to next time. And in the interim, thank you again.
It's a pleasure. It's been fun. Thank you, Kim.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.